Good morning. Well, it's wonderful to see wide audience spread widely at the same time. So, as you might have seen, the topic of the interest today is JOOTSing. A little bit weird word, and I'm sure you must have looked at it already. We'll talk about that, but what do you see on the screen? Can anybody tell me uh, who does this quote is usually attributed to? Archimedes, that's correct. Archimedes, and it's not exactly word to word, but what he said is, give me a lever long enough and a place to stand, and a fulcrum, I think, and I shall move the earth. Now, I'm pretty certain everyone in this room has that spirit. As an engineer, uh, working in this industry, we have the spirit like, if I have the right tools, I can do wonders. That's true. But here's the thing, and that's why you will see that one word that's been highlighted, lever. Unfortunately, a lot of us, when we look at the bigger picture, we don't have that lever or leverage. We are always confined by what is out there available, right? And when you look at generative AI, that's the keyword these days, right? Nobody talks anything but Gen AI. As an engineer, as a developer, as anybody working in API economy, how do you find your voice? How do you find your factor? How do you make yourself noticed and have that career growth? Now, Saulo has done a great job telling what I do, and you probably may have a little bit confused, like, well, what do I actually do? I'm an author, but before I was an author, I ran a company, design studio, and we used to make electronics, hardware, and software products for nearly 10 years. I sold that company, started writing books, speaking, and then I started a filmmaking business. Now, how does an engineer ends up in filmmaking industry? At some point, you will see it doesn't make any sense, right? This guy doesn't know what he's doing. But then it will make sense in a bit. And I think it's the same piece for all of you sitting here. You can move laterally only if you follow certain principles. And being an engineer or coming from that background or working in that industry, we have it. We have that. Somebody just needs to provoke or tell us what to do, how to do it. And that's where this thing called JOOTSing comes into play. But let me ask you this question first. How many of you would identify yourself as an engineer, developers, or like that? Right. Oh, wow. That's a lot. Anybody who is a bit more like a management style work? All right. Thank you. So majority of the developer folks, as well as management folks, you would see that. How do you see if, and I know a lot of times we answer very quickly that, do you feel threatened by Gen AI replacing you? And we say, no, I've got a uniqueness. What's unique about it? Because the same answer was there 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and we continue doing that. But then we had to learn another skill still, right? So question is that uniqueness, what is it now? In the world of Gen AI, what is that uniqueness? And we have to start working on it now before it's too late. And that's where the word JOOTSing comes in. Because think about this, like if every car, and at some point in time that was the case, when cars were being manufactured very first time, they were all black, right? Because it was most efficient thing to do. All black cars, how do you differentiate? And then somebody said, all right, let's start painting them in different color. So you have black and white and maybe pink car. And one pink car stands out in the whole heap of cars. But then what happens? The other people say, okay, pink car is getting attention. Let me paint my car as well, pink. And then all of a sudden, in some time, you see every car is pink. Again, you lost that differentiation. Then we say, all right, let's change that color to some other color, rainbow colors. And again, in some point in time, you see all cars being different color, none of them being easily identifiable. And then again, you say, all right, let me paint it back, black or white. And then you go back. And the loop continues. Now, put this in context of our career. It's a certification, it's a new skill, it's a new software that we learn. Suddenly everybody is learning that. We lost that edge. And then we will move on to another software, another tool. And again, heaps of community learns the same thing. There's no more differentiation. We learn new things. It needs a lot of perseverance, effort, and resources, and speed. Because now it's so fast. Every 3 months you have to learn new things. And you will soon feel exhausted at some point in time. That am I into a loop, continuously doing the same thing over and over and over again, and still I can't beat it? That's where I think this JOOTSing piece comes into play. Because everybody loves AI, GenAI, they're lovable, but we also know it's a bit of a problem if we don't get ahead of the curve. How do we get ahead of the curve? And especially when I told you the car example, the problem is everybody is going to catch up anyway. So what is that unique difference? How do we do it? And that's where the word JOOTSing comes in. Has anybody looked up already what is JOOT means? Anybody? It's a simple acronym. It's not a corporate jargon or anything. It just says jumping out of the system. All right, jumping out of the system. Now, how do you jump out of the system while doing what you do? It doesn't mean you stop doing what you do as an engineer or developer and start doing something else. It means the thinking changes while you do what you do. But the way you look at things, that needs changing. The way you approach at a problem, that changes. The way you approach at a problem and provide a solution, that needs changing. So JOOTSing essentially is hinged upon 3 key steps. And the first step is finding a linchpin. Have you seen this advert, by the way? This is James' advertisement. Do you know why this is funny? Yeah. So guys who don't have a bit of a context around this, it's an advertisement by Cadbury, and what it shows you is there's a big, in a museum, there's a big installation made of these small tablets, sweet tablets. It's huge, and somehow the artist has made it hung up on a wall. And this guy goes in and he sees there is this one blue pill. He wants to eat that, and he picks up that one blue pill. The whole installation crumbles down with like millions of tablets. The point is that one little pill was the linchpin in the whole installation. Think about taxi business. When Uber picked up that little blue pill out of it, the whole taxi business got questioned and disrupted. Because that one blue pill for taxi business was licensing and knowing the route. And even till today, if you are a London taxi driver, like a black cab drivers, they are supposed to know every route by heart. And it's not an easy thing to do. You have to learn, you have to do your reps to do that. Have a Google map, you don't need to do that anymore. And suddenly that blue pill is gone. Licensing, what? $100,000 just to get a plate, taxi plate. And now suddenly you don't need any of that. You just need a car and an Uber app, and you can do that. So all those linchpins. So linchpin is something that binds the industry, that particular domain, And if that thing is gone, it becomes disrupted. Everybody has an advantage, right? Smartphone cameras, like earlier, you had to have like a big, expensive DSLR even to have meaningful photographs, right? If you don't have it, you can't. Now everybody has got a camera. DSLRs are like, okay, not a big deal, right? So that's the linchpin. So in the domain you work, what is that linchpin? In the problem you're trying to solve, what is that linchpin? That's the first thing I would do every time I'm going to solve a problem, is figure out in the whole ecosystem of that problem, in the context of that problem, where is that linchpin? And that's the linchpin I want to exploit, right? Then the next thing. So once I find the linchpin, what do I do with that? Is I break that convention. I can change hundreds of the things, but that's not going to give me any material or big impact as much as that one linchpin is going to give me. I do 10 things, I'll get 50% uplift. I do this one thing, I get 80% uplift. I would rather do that one efficiently and effectively, targeted, focused, than doing 10 other things. So once I find that linchpin, I exploit it by breaking the convention. I wouldn't do it the same way everybody else is doing, otherwise it's no difference. I'll try and find out how do I do that differently, right? And third step, of course, is once you're trying, you got to run through the loop very, very quickly because you're trying something totally new. Because if it wasn't new, it wasn't non-conventional. So once you're trying something new or non-conventional, you've got to quickly figure out if it is going to work, if it is going to work at a scale, at a production scale, and can you repeat it over and over again. So testing, learning, adapting, tweaking, coming back, doing the same thing is the thing. And I was just talking about a while ago, now I run a film studio as well. We produced a documentary series just announced last month in 1/5 of the traditional budget. Now, I'm no filmmaker, I'm an engineer by training. How do I end up doing filmmaking? Because I looked at the filmmaking industry, I dabbled into it for quite some time, understood what works, how they do things, and where they need 15 people to run a project, where they need certain gears, certain techniques, certain processes to make that project happen. I put my engineering hat on, I bring the expertise from one field into another field and optimize things that I do the best, like every engineer would try and optimize things. And we finish that project at the same quality in 1/5 of the cost and crew team. Like we had 6 people crew versus anybody would have said 20 people, easy. And so that gives us an advantage. And so every time we do look at that, what is the linchpin and how do we break it? And how do I break it? How am I testing and learning? Because I'm using my knowledge from one field in another field. Right, so I'm using my engineering knowledge here. And so what can you do is the most important thing. I've told you what is JOOTSing is and how it works in 3 steps. What can you do if you go out of this room today in next 20 minutes? What can you start doing? And the first thing you want to do is understand the whole thing is a complex juxtaposition of control and playfulness. So you have to have a bit of a controlled approach, but at the same time, be a little bit flexible and playful. And you'll get there. Art of noticing. That's one thing you must learn. So when we did that filmmaking project, I'm noticing and figuring out what is that thing ticks. What is that thing mandatory? So when you start noticing things, like think about how many times when you go on the street, are the lampposts at the center of the street or on both sides of the street? We just don't notice those things, right? But when we open up our eyes, start noticing those things, we start to exploit them differently. Systems thinking, most engineers, most developers have that aptitude, how to Look at the thing not just as a narrow thing, but as a whole thing. And so systems thinking is the second piece you can start actively doing. I'm pretty sure you all do that, but start actively looking at systems thinking. Look at the system, even if you're developing an API, even if you're developing a small piece of code or small software, see how it fits in the big gamut of things. And you suddenly start finding out different solutions. Designing of experiments. I'm not saying trial and error, I'm saying designing of experiments. It's a different approach. Trial and error is just hit in the blind and see if it works or not. Design an experiment. You have hypotheses, you have planned things, you have attributed to risks and rewards. And so you're doing it in a controlled fashion. So all three steps, when we do, that's when you get to say something miraculous happening. And the key to doing all this is not just working or looking in the same domain, it is looking across the domains and connecting dots. That's the key. When I connected dots from engineering to filmmaking, when I connected dots from engineering to writing a book, that's when I get most success. Otherwise, I just become the same one, another person who is doing the same thing. So when we are looking at going outside, outstanding, having a differentiation, this is the thing to do. With that, I'll leave you JOOTSing in your career, in your world. Thank you.